Hi, I'm Jeremy, and today I'm going to take a look at a game by the name of Tatsu. This is a two-player abstract game. It's by the designer of a pretty famous abstract game, perhaps one of the most famous two-player abstract games by the name of Hive. This is put out by the same company. It has a similar quality of pieces, but it is a slightly different game. It's a roll and move game, almost a cross between backgammon and Parcheesi. I will take a moment to show you how the game plays, and then I will come back and let you know what I think about Tatsu. So the game of Tatsu is going to be for two players, and each player is going to get 9 of these playing pieces, which come in 3 different colors. You can see that they'll start with 3 of these green pieces out on their field, so there's a black and a white player. And the black players are going to be traveling this way, while the white players are going to be traveling that way over the course of the game. And this is essentially just a roll and move game, and what's going to happen on your turn is that you're just going to roll the dice, and then you're going to allocate those dice to move your pieces. So here I have a 4 and a 2. I can move this piece 1, 2, 3, 4, and then move this one too. Or I could, for example, just move this piece 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you can move one or both pieces. You'll notice that each space here has 2 segments. Essentially, there's a top and a bottom piece. So often what will happen is, let's say I'm this piece and another piece moves onto it. That will have an effect based on the type of piece that has landed on top. If ever you land on top with another one of your piece, this bottom piece cannot move until this piece moves away first. If an opponent moves on you, there's going to be one of 3 effects. Essentially, if you get trapped by an opponent's green piece, that is the vine dragon. These are essentially dragon pieces you can see here of the 3 different kinds. So the green vine dragon, that will ensnare this bottom piece. It won't be able to move. There is a way out of that. Let's say you roll, and this is a piece I wanted to move. You can do that. All you have to do is discard when you roll the higher of your 2 dice, and then use the bottom dice to move away. So here, if I rolled an 11, I could discard the 6 and move this piece here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That would slide down. The second type of dragon is going to be this water dragon. If ever the water dragon moves on top of another piece, it simply banishes this back to here, so it needs to be summoned again. I'll explain how pieces are summoned in one moment. And the third type of dragon is a fire dragon. If ever the red fire dragon or I guess orange fire dragon moves on top of your piece, it simply is knocked out of the game, does not come back, cannot come back. So those are essentially the 3 types of pieces. Like I said, at the start of the game, you're going to start with only these 3 pieces in play. Then you're going to roll. If ever you move onto one of these pieces here, these colored spaces, so for example here, these blue spaces, these green spaces, or these red spaces here, you will move one of these pieces from this area here, which is called your tray, to this area here, which is called your mat. So for example, if I move this piece here, this piece would slide into my mat, and then later it would be able to be deployed. So you can see these first 3 spaces have a 1, 2, or 3. If I rolled a 1, 2, or 3, so for example here I rolled a 2, I can move that piece out here, and it would then be in play. So the game's just going to continue with pieces moving around the board, new pieces being summoned out, and players eliminating each other's pieces by using the red dragons or sending them back home using the blue dragons until one of 2 conditions is met. The first condition is that one player does not have any pieces either in their mat or on the board. If they have all their pieces in here, or they've been captured, they will be eliminated from the game because they have no ability to summon more pieces to the board. The second thing that could happen is that you use your fire dragons to eliminate all of one player's type of dragons. So for example, you have 2 orange dragons, 3 blue dragons, and 4 green dragons. If one of those types gets eliminated entirely for a player, that player loses, the other player wins. And that is how you play Tatsu. Alright, so that is Tatsu. And I should start by saying that I had pretty decent expectations for this game, given that it's from the designer of 2 games I like. One is Army of Frogs, that's a nice abstract game, and the other is Hive, and that's a very good abstract game, one that I've played a lot of. And I have to say that this game somewhat disappoints me. It is essentially a roll and move game. I think that it's in a lot of ways similar to backgammon. It's a lot of ways similar to Parcheesi, or maybe even Sorry, where you're sending pieces back home and trying to get them out onto the board. But at the same time, it does not have as much depth as I was expecting. The game does have dice in it, so often during the game, especially toward the end of the game where you have fewer pawns to pick from, or if you're in a situation where you're having trouble getting pawns out onto the board, you're not going to have a lot of say in what you're going to be doing on a given turn, and essentially the game becomes really deterministic. And I've seen the game play in certain situations where one player just essentially has a couple of their pawns locked up into two formations, and they only have like one more piece that could potentially capture pieces, and they're just zipping around the board, turn after turn, trying to, hope for a lucky roll so that they could send pieces home. So there is potential, even though there are, sudden death endgame conditions in this game, there is potential for the endgame to just drag out with players just basically taking turns hoping for, that one lucky roll, which is not inherently awful. I mean, the game is rules light, and the game is relatively simple to teach and play, and I think that, as a relatively light filler game, it's fine. It's not. I'm not saying that's broken. I'm not saying that's not to a certain degree fun, but I think a lot of the players who are going to be attracted to this game are players who like the designer and really like Hive, and I have to say that this just does not feel a lot like Hive. I'm not sure that this is strategically deeper than backgammon, to be honest. And that's a game that, has stood the test of time. This is a game that, I've played a few times now, and I'm not sure how many more times I want to play it. Another game that this reminds me of, and I have the travel edition here, is Verflixt, which is available in the US as That's Life, and that's a similar roll and move game. This one actually plays up to 6 players. I think the travel version just 4. But that is a similar roll and move game that offers way more interesting decisions as you're going to be manipulating numerous pawns with your die rolls. So that would be something that I would absolutely pull out every time before I think I'd pull out Tatsu, even with only 2 players. I just think that, perhaps there's depth here and I'm missing it, but it just does not seem like an extremely compelling game, and I've just, even only playing this a few times, I've had like the end game turn into a bit of a slog where, essentially becomes a game of dice luck. Even though there are some interesting strategic decisions to be made from time to time, setting yourselves up to do captures in the most possible ways, you are mitigating the dice luck to a certain degree. This was not really the game that I expected it to be, given the designer's pedigree. As a light, 2-player roll and move game, I guess it's okay. But at the same time, I think I would probably prefer to play backgammon or something like That's Life. So I'm sorry to say that's my opinion on Tatsu, and thank you for watching.